Welcome Wargamers, my name is Doug with 2+ Tough, and today we are doing a redo of the Kharadon Overlords Start Collecting box. I don't think I've done this since their new book came out, and I'm kind of in an effort to rebuild all my Start Collecting box reviews and update them for 2nd edition. So in this video, we're going to talk about the contents of the box, what you actually get, what that means for a collection, and why it's appealing to new gamers. We're going to go through each war scroll one by one, and then essentially at the end ask the question, is this a good value? Based on a few things of, are you actually going to use these models in your collection, and that kind of stuff. So go ahead and sit back. Let's dive into the Start Collecting box for the Kharadon Overlords. In this box, you will receive one Endrinmaster, that's the leader there, one Grunstock Gunhauler, that's the ship, 5 Grunstock Thunderers, those are your units there, and 3 Skywardens, which could optionally be built as Endrinriggers. Now let's start out with a kind of a bird's eye view. This is a fantastic collection of models. By that I mean you really get a sense of what Kharadon Overlords are like. You have a ship, which is, I think, a lot of what appeals to a lot of gamers when it comes to this army. You have some cool gun guys. You got a hero with a huge hammer, because there's nothing more Warhammer than just a guy with a hammer on the battlefield surrounded by guns. And of course you get your balloon boys, as I call them, the Skywardens or Endrinriggers, however you build them. They both have the balloon on the back that are kind of your faster, more aggressive thing that can keep up with the Gunhauler. Now where this box does run into some issues is when I look at Start Collecting boxes, I really want them all to have a leader and a battle line option. Everything else to me is kind of icing on the cake, so to speak. And this one doesn't have a flat battle line option. So many of these units have battle line if, meaning if you have certain conditions, you can have battle line options, but there's nothing straight. The only straight battle line in the entire faction is Arkanaut Company, which are of course not in this box. The reason I get so hopped up on having battle line stuff is because I want people to buy into a faction and have total freedom to build whatever kind of army they want, whereas the battle line if stuff kind of leads you down certain paths when it comes to your collection and how you want to build it out. So looking at my notes here, the Gunhauler, the actual ship itself, is battle line if you take the Barak Urbaz sub-faction, meaning you will need to buy the battletome to be able to do that. The Thunderers are battle line if you take Barak Nar, very emphasis on shooting and that kind of stuff. And the Blimpy boys, the guys with the balloons, are battle line if you have a different leader. There's basically an Endrinmaster with his own personal balloon pack on his back. If you take him, those become battle line. What this means, though, is that depending on the kind of army you had in your mind when you got excited about these guys, your value with the box will vary, right? If you're just like, I want ships all day long, this is great because you get, you do get a battle line choice in the Gunhauler, as well as some, troop choices that can either keep up with them, meaning whatever variant of the balloon guys you want, or cool stuff to put inside of your other larger ships that can transport people, like the Thunderers are actually a really great shooting unit. So there's still a few ways you can go. You really have to think, I always encourage people when they're looking at Start Collecting box reviews here in this kind of hobby, really take a moment to think about what you want your collection or your army to look like. And again, your mileage will vary based on that. So now what we're going to do is head over to the shared screen. We're going to walk through the different war scrolls and just kind of talk about what you can reasonably expect from these units and what they're good at and how they kind of fit into the army. So whenever I kick off these reviews, I like to talk about the heroes first, because these are really your synergy builders, right? When it comes to different interactions and stuff, usually they kind of set the tone for what your troops can do. So we'll take a look at him first. Of course, Endrinmaster with an Endrin harness, meaning that big old clunky thing on his back. 4-inch move. Why? Because these are, at the end of the day, dwarves, and dwarves is slow. He's got 6 wounds, which is pretty great, and a 4-up save, so he's the tankier of the dwarven leaders for sure. I mean, there's some that are better, but he does pretty well, I think, especially compared to like his Fire Slayer brothers, right? He's going to take more hits than them. He's got a 7 bravery, which shouldn't come up a ton, but it will be here and there. Now, as far as weapons, he has a missile weapon, the Gaze of Grogny. 9-inch range, 1 attack, 3s to hit, 2s to wound, -1 rend, and D3 damage. Not a bad little, essentially super pistol is kind of how I think about it. I like it quite a bit, actually. 3 up, 2 up, -1 rend is a great profile just for an attack that, you know, you don't necessarily want him in melee or that close, but if he's there, he can do some stuff, and that's always nice. In addition to that, he has the Ether Might Hammer, which is certainly his main weapon. 1 inch range, 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, and D3 damage. Again, solid profile. 3 up is one of my favorite profiles to see because it takes modifiers very, very well and is just super easy to remember, honestly. That's kind of why I love it so much. Now, looking here, description, Endrinmaster is with an Endrin harness is a single model, and he just comes with those both weapons. There's no real options here, but that's all right. And as far as his abilities go, Endrinmaster, at the start of the hero phase, you can pick 1 friendly sky vessel within 1 inch of this model, heal up to D3 wounds allocated to that sky vessel. So he is a mechanic. If you don't know the lore of the story, he's basically an action hero engineer, right? He's on the battlefield, he has guns, but he wants to be there healing ships and doing repairs and that kind of stuff. And of course, you do have some synergy there because you do have the Grunstock Gunhauler, which is a sky vessel. So, you know, again, part of the thing with the ships is they move so fast that having him within an inch, it could be a pain, but I understand. So it's very interesting for him to be able to use that healing ability, but it can be done, especially because some of the ships have longer range guns. Now, with him also is the Endrin harness, the thing on his back. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by this model is 6, that attack inflicts 3 mortal wounds and the attack sequence ends. Do not make a wound or save roll. That's pretty great. I would love it to be in addition to, but, you know, I feel that way about everything. But honestly, I'm not going to sneeze at 3 mortal wounds from a little mechanic, you know, sub-hero kind of guy. Now, as far as his command ability, which is fantastic, I love when Start Collecting boxes have a command ability so that new players can learn all these things. He has, by Grugny, I have my eye on you. You can use this command ability in your hero phase before a friendly Endrin Riggers unit, which we'll talk about that later, wholly within 18 inches of a friendly model with this command ability uses its Endrin Craft ability. We'll get to that in a bit. If you do so, you can re-roll any of the dice that determine how many wounds are healed by that Endrin Riggers unit in that phase. Now, I actually have the Endrin Riggers profile pulled up, and just for the result here, at the start of your hero phase, you can pick 1 friendly sky vessel within 1 inch of this unit and roll a dice for each model in this unit. On a 4-up, you heal 1 wound allocated to it. If you're not familiar, the way I'll put it very simply is the Endrinmaster is like the head mechanic, so he instantly heals D3 wounds at the start of the hero phase. Endrin Riggers are like, you know, engineering interns basically that have a chance to repair ships nearby, but it's not as like dedicated and consistent, and so they have a 4-up chance. Well, he allows them to do better. He's basically shouting instructions, here's how you fix the dang ship, right? And so that's the idea. Now, keep in mind, with the box, the way that this presents it to you, you have an option when you build your, again, Balloon Boys, Skywardens, can also be built as Endrin Riggers. The box shows you Skywardens, but we'll talk about the merits of those two later on. So that's his command ability. It's extremely limited in scope because, at best, you're paying a command point for rerollable healing on a different ship. But again, if you are going to focus heavily on having ships and stuff, having, you know, a set of highly mobile balloon guys with them to repair them on the go is not a bad call. It just depends on, you know, if your opponent can flood the battlefield with bodies. Those ships are going to take so many wounds and kind of be blocked out of areas that meager amounts of healing will probably not do a whole lot. So it has uses for sure. It's just not my fave. How about that? So we're going to move on. Oh, actually, I want to point out here at the end, just to kind of sum up, he has synergies with the Gunhauler, and if you choose to build your flying guys as Endrin Riggers rather than Skywardens. And I want to point that out because for new folks, learning these synergies and how things interact with one another is really important. So again, he does have interactions with 2 units in the box, which is fantastic, I think, for learning. Now, next up, we have the Grunstock Thunderers. This is the unit that you get Again, I believe it's Arkanaut is the faction that makes these guys battle line. And they have a myriad of weapon options, okay? I'm just going to say this. Every one of them can be built with the basic weapon, the ether shot rifle. And I actually love the ether shot rifle just as a base weapon, but we'll get to that. So they have a 4-inch move, again, cuz dwarf. And they have 2 wounds each, which is phenomenal. They are a fairly tanky unit for this faction. Again, certainly when it comes to ground troops. A 4-up save is great, and bravery 7. So we're going to read the description here because that's going to tell you how you can load these guys out. A unit of Arkanaut Thunderers has any number of models, each armed with an ether shot rifle and a gun butt. Again, that's it. Just got a cool rifle or a gun butt. And a gun butt. It means you just punch them in melee. 1 in every 5 models can replace their ether shot rifle with a Grundstock mortar. 1 in every 5 models can replace their ether shot rifle with an ether cannon. 1 in every 5 can replace their ether shot rifle with an etheric fumigator. 1 in every 5 models can replace their ether shot rifle with a deck sweeper. That means of your 5-man unit, 4 of them could be rocking special weapons. Okay, and that's pretty awesome. As for the gunnery sergeant, 1 model in this unit can be a gunnery sergeant, meaning the leader of the troop. Replace that model's weapon with a double barrel ether shot rifle. So he basically just gets a better gun, right? It's the same as the normal rifle, you just shoot twice as many. Again, it's literally a double barrel gun. So that's rad. Basically what I want to do here is move past this. I want to talk about the unit's rules, and then we're going to come back around and talk about the actual weapon options, because a lot of these have special effects that are listed down below. So rather than just jumping back and forth right now without context of what they actually do in combat, I want to kind of put the attack profile and its abilities that it adds into kind of a sequence for you. So moving on here, 1 in every 5 models in this unit can be an honor bearer. You can reroll battle shock tests for a unit that includes any honor bearers. So yeah, they get like a banner bearer basically, and it doesn't preclude you from taking special weapons on them. So there's like no reason not to have that. But we will move along here. We have the main ability that I want to focus on when it comes to this unit, no matter what weapon options you take, that is fantastic, is this thing here called Drive Them Back. Okay, add 1 to the attack's characteristic of missile weapons used by this unit while any enemies are within 3 inches of this unit. This ability cannot be used by a model that is part of a garrison. So obviously if you put them in a ship or if you put them in a tower, a garrison on the board, you can't do that. But if they're on the table and they're on an objective and someone tries to charge them, if there's someone nearby, every gun gets better. They are just shoveling bullets at you until you go away. Okay, that's basically it. I love it so much. Then we're going to start moving into the weapon profile. So like I said, the basic weapon that they all can take, ether shot rifles. It's actually, I had a unit of these guys, actually I had 2 units, I think. Back in the day, at one point I was building out some KO stuff. I just wanted to build the models. And I gave them all ether shot rifles because quite frankly, it was easier to remember. In the old book, it was a little bit more tedious to go through all the different abilities of each weapon, but I liked it. 18-inch range, 2 attacks, 3s to hit, 4s to wound, -1 rend and 1 damage. Nothing to sneeze at when you can throw on, 1 more attack if they're within 3, or you can just douse fire. 18 inches, I think, is a great range. The leader has the same profile, he just gets 2 extra attacks because he has the double barrel one. Now, the etheric fumigator, okay? This is the one that looks like an accordion with a hose attached to it, basically. Only a 9-inch range, so he won't be getting every shot that the rest of the unit can. 9-inch range, 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. But he has a special ability, Choking Fug, which is just fun to say. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy models within 3 inches of any friendly models armed with an etheric fumigator. This ability cannot be used if it's part of a garrison. So this is a very defensive weapon, right? The rest of the things have a longer range. They can reach out and hurt the enemy, but the minute they get charged, Subtracting 1 from their hit rolls is a great defense. -1 to hit on your enemies, and you get +1 attack because drive them back has nothing to do with what weapons you have. You just, if they're within 3, boom, they're having a rough day. I like that quite a bit. I'm not sure if I would... It depends. If you really think that these guys are going to get charged, it's a great weapon to have. If you're trying to play them specifically in a way where they stay out of combat as much as possible, like you have Arkanaut Company acting as a meat shield or something, the longer range guns I think tend to do better, but I understand that there's definitely a case to be made for the Fumigator. Now, we're going to go through this sequence of weapons because the rest of these are super interesting, but they all kind of dovetail off one another, okay? Add 1 to the hit rolls made with the Grundstock Mortar, Deck Sweeper, or Ether Cannon when it is used by a unit that has at least 1 of each of these weapons. It used to be if you scored a hit with 1, then the next one in line would do better, and then if anything from that weapon hit, the one after that would do even better, and so it was this very wordy thing. Now it's just, hey, if you built your models to have all the weapon options, you're rewarded by getting additional attacks with them, which is not a bad bonus to have by any means. And the idea is each of these weapons is contributing to knocking your opponent off their game. It's called pin them, shred them, and finish them. So yeah, if you have a mortar, a deck sweeper, or ether cannon, when it's used by a unit that has at least one each of them, and that goes for no matter how many are in your unit. So if you were to have a unit of 10 of these guys, but still only have 1 of each of those, and the rest are ether shot rifles, those specific attacks would still get bonuses, even though the rest of the unit can reach out further and hurt people. So with that in mind, let's take a look at those other things. We already did the Fumigator, the Deck Sweeper, 12-inch range, 4 attacks, 4s to hit, 4s to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. Not my fave, but again, if you're adding 1 to your hit rolls, it's a 3-up, 4-up. It could be good. Ether Cannon. This is the 12-inch range, 1 attack, 4s to hit, 2s to wound, -2 rend, and D3 damage. That's rad. -2 rend and D3 damage is nothing to sneeze at. The idea of getting +1 to hit on that weapon specifically is awesome, right? 3-up, 2-up is a great profile. And then we have the Grundstock Mortar, 12-inch range, 1 attack, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, no rend on this one, and D3 damage. That one's all right. I would definitely take... I think the Ether Cannon is the strongest choice out of those for sure. And that's if you're taking all the weapons. And this is what I would say for this entire unit. Here's my honest suggestion if you're looking at this unit, okay? To me, there's 2 ways to go here. You have to go all in on one of them. And you don't have to, obviously, you don't literally have to. But I really do suggest either having the whole unit have ether shot rifles for that consistency of 18-inch range, 2 attacks each. You know, the leader guy has his double barrel one, 3s to hit, 4s to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. It's a great profile, and it's augmented by some things in the faction. I love that. The other option is equipping every weapon option here so you can gain the benefit of the pin them, shred them, and finish them rule. I think probably the only kind of decision that kind of leaves you in a weird place is if you only have 1 or 2 of these weapon options, because you know, stuff like the ether cannon, right? Giving that +1 to hit is flippin' dope. Okay, like it really is. It's a great weapon right there, and I think, in my opinion, it's a strong case for taking all of them anyway. If you're gonna have them be more aggressive and upfront, having the deck sweeper and the fumigator to give them, you know, your opponent -1 to hit, I think that could be a definite win. If you're going to have a minimum sized unit that's going to stay back out of combat, I suggest the ether shot rifles. If you want them to be more aggressive, maybe holding an objective and you know that the enemy is going to be coming towards them, or at least coming for that objective, then I think there's a good case for decking them out with all kinds of stuff. I think, but like I said, I really do believe taking the time to like have all the weapon variations to gain the benefit of pin them, shred them, finish them would be really worth it. But I think just picking one or two and not going all the way, it kind of weakens them because you're losing the consistency of the ether shot rifle, and you're not gaining the benefit of the finish them, the whatever, pin them, shred them, finish them move. So that's the only thing I would really suggest is like, the thing is that it's a 5-man unit. It's not very big. You're not making a terrible decision if you load them out with all the weapons, and it's super easy to talk to your opponent and be like, hey, listen, I know what these guys are armed with, but can we just say it's all ether shot rifles? Because it's just one nice, consistent profile. I can't imagine anyone really caring, but that's me. Your tournament organizer may vary. But for me, I would probably say just think about what role you want them to fulfill. If you want them to be more upfront and aggressive, I think it's a great idea to kind of deck them out with all the cool weapons, if nothing else, to model them. I think it would look really nice. And then if you want them to stay back and be consistent as a supporting damage unit, ether shot rifles are probably where I'd go. But we're going to move on to the next one, which is the Grundstock Gunhauler, the smallest of the ships that you could possibly fly. It's the Corvette of blimps, and I love it. It's got a 12-inch move, so, 3 times as fast as dudes on foot, which is not actually a lot when you compare it to some of the other speedy units. But hey, for dwarves and their little bitty legs, it's pretty darn fast. He's got 10 wounds and 4 up save with 7 bravery. Now, I will say this. As opposed to many people in the competitive community, I love models like this, where they're the most amount of wounds that you can have without having a degrading profile. If you're new to AOS, most large creatures have a degrading profile. Like the more damage they take, the worse they get at things. So they'll lose attacks and that kind of stuff. I love units where they have a decent save. 4 up is fine. You can throw Mystic Shield or something on them. And you have 10 wounds to deal with, and you can just be a bumper for anything to crash against. He can move up, he can dump a bunch of ammo. If he takes 3 or 4 wounds, it does not matter. It does not affect his attack profile. I love that kind of stuff. So I like that profile quite a bit. That's why I like chariots and stuff, although I know most folks don't really care for them. So, your mileage will vary. Personally, I think it's cool. Now, a Grundstock Gunhauler is I'm just going to call it a Gunhauler from now on. It's a single model armed with an ether shot carbine, boarding weapons, and one of the following weapon options: sky cannon or a drill cannon. Okay, so no matter what, there's a dude with a rifle, and he gets boarding weapons. So basically, it's like their melee option. They just kind of whip their swords around at people. Now, what's interesting is the sky cannon has 2 different shooting options. So it is certainly the most versatile, but we'll go through them and talk about it here in a second. For the purposes of discussing the weapons in context, I want to talk about his abilities before we go into the missile weapons here. So a head full. Once per battle, at the start of your movement phase, you can say that this model will move a head full. If you do so, add 6 to the movement characteristic of this model in that phase. That's fantastic. Also remember, you can have multiples of these guys, not in the same unit, it's a single model, but what I love is that you can create a little squadron that it plays very aggressively, right? For 1 turn, they can move 18 inches, which is a fantastic amount of speed. You can use that up front to pin enemies in place, literally just shoot across the board, because nothing, as far as I can tell, says you can't charge afterwards. So you would move 18 and then be able to charge. Do you want them in combat? Not really. But do you want to pin your opponent in place so that they have to fall back? Sometimes yes. That's what they're there for. It's an option. It's a tool in your toolbox to use. I love it. Also, in addition to, rushing forward, you can also save that ability for the late game when you'll need to jet across the board to get an objective, which again is how you win these games. The next one is Escort Vessel. Roll 1 dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly sky vessel other than a Grundstock Gunhauler while it's within 3 inches of any friendly Grundstock Gunhauler. On a 6, that mortal wound is negated. So what that means is if this guy is next to a bigger ship, it can't be another Gunhauler, but if it's next to a bigger ship, they have a chance to take the wounds for them. So it's a cool little escort vessel. I like it. Oh, look at that. It's in the name. It's fantastic. You know, that's what the basic ability is. So I like that quite a bit. And I wanted to put those in context because when we talk about, you know, the ranges of some of these things, remember, once per game, you can add 6 inches to your movement and nothing says you can't shoot afterwards or charge. You know what I mean? Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Now, let's talk about some guns. We have a few weapon options here we'll cover here in a second. Basically, the one that's important for the Sky Cannon is before you attack with the Sky Cannon, you have to choose either the shrapnel or shell missiles. Basically, what ammo are they loading into the gun? So, Sky Cannon, shrapnel, okay? 18-inch range, D6 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, and 2 damage. That's awesome. The shell version, so that I'm assuming this is meant to be like our shrapnel is for clearing infantry, and the shell would be for something heavy, a big target. The shell option is 24-inch range, 1 attack, 3s to hit, 2 to wound, -2 rend, and D6 damage. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to highlight these two. I know that the D6 damage looks real sexy. However, you have to keep in mind that it's easy to look at that and be like, oh man, that can do 6 damage. It could also do 1, right? And that's assuming you land the 3-up and the 2-up, and that 2 rend is enough to get through their armor, which honestly, you know, it's fairly good odds that. There's some tanky things that can shrug that off, but for the most part, most models don't want to be hit with a -2 rend weapon. In my opinion, man, that's a tough call. It really depends on the opportunity of your target, right? Depending on their save and that kind of stuff, I tend to lean towards the shrapnel cannon, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, there's good cases for both. It just really depends on your target. And I like the fact that choosing this weapon, you're not giving up things. You still have options available to you in the form of their weapons and stuff. Now, the other option is the drill cannon. 36-inch range. That's a long gun. I like it. 1 attack, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -3 rend, D3 damage. That is rad. Again, this is going to be your go-to weapon if you want this to be an artillery piece, which it can absolutely be. You know, he can be a very mobile artillery piece. He can run up to an objective, and then if you can defend him, meaning maybe there's a transport ship next to him that dumps a bunch of Arkanaut company to absorb charges, he can sit on that objective and fire at anything pretty much across the board, like if you want him to. And that's fantastic. Now, I do also want to say that the drill cannon has a special ability. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with the drill cannon is a 5-up, that attack inflicts 3 mortal wounds on the target and the attack sequence ends. So it has the potential to be nasty. Also remember, 1 shot. Okay, 1 shot, 3-up, 3-up, -3 rend, and D3 damage. So it's certainly not a bad gun whatsoever. The 1 shot hurts, but the range is really what you're there for when it comes to the drill cannon. Those are your weapon options. You also get an ether shot carbine, which is basically just the rifle we talked about for the other guys. 12-inch range on this one. 2 attacks, 3s to hit, 4s to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. It's just one of the guys, you know, inside the flyer, just with his own personal rifle, just shooting at the side, basically. And then their melee weapon, which you never want to use. Boarding weapons, 4 attacks, 4s to hit, 4s to wound, no rend, 1 damage. It is the saddest profile in all of Sigmar. Whenever you see a unit with that, you're like, oh, okay, I never want to use that. Doesn't matter what the attack is. So we're going to move down here to the abilities, because there are some more abilities that aren't weapon specific. But I wanted to get those ones covered here. There's bomb racks. At the start of the combat phase, you can pick 1 enemy unit within 1 inch of this model and roll a dice. On a 4-up, the enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Again, this is another case for having these guys bum rush and pin down enemies. Are they attacking very strong? No, but they have a chance to do some mortal wounds and, again, force your enemy to retreat for their action, which nobody wants to do. And then there is disengage. This model, and any models in its garrison, can retreat and still shoot later in the same turn, as long as there are no enemy units that can fly within 3 inches at the start of the retreat move. So as long as he's not going against another flying thing, he can back it up and fire at them, which is still powerful. Again, there's a lot of control here when it comes to pinning your opponent. So, you know, let's say, I don't know, have them launch forward and attack a bunch of clan rats, right? Are they going to kill a whole bunch of them? Probably not. But then those clan rats have to like retreat and move around the physical base of this thing, which can be a problem. And if they don't kill it, which they may not, depending on the buffs that Skaven unit can get. Certainly if you put more than one of these things into that unit to pin it in place, and then you'll clog up the entire Skaven army, you can really mess with them, because then the next turn, whatever one of these things survives can back out, fire at point blank, and basically at that point, hopefully you've landed on some objectives, and that's kind of where the game plays from there on out. So it's a great ability. Anytime, you know, a shooting unit can disengage and fire, it's a great thing. Next, they have Fly High. Instead of making a normal move with this model, you can say it will fly high. It can retreat and disengage with this. If you do so, remove this model from the battlefield and set it up again more than 1 inch from any terrain feature or objectives, and more than 9 inches from enemy models. So remember we said before, you could, at the end of the game, use that speed, that 6-inch extra move that you get once per game to get on an objective. Well, if there's no enemies around that objective, you can instead do a fly high. Now, again, there's pros and cons to doing both. Certainly if you, if you wanted to, you could rush these guys, turn 1, pin down some enemy. If they survive, fly high, boom, back them up. And that's their movement for the turn, and now they can fire. That's amazing. I love it. So there's a lot of play with these. I think that these are a sleeper. You don't see them a ton necessarily in lists, but having a 10 wound 4-up save model that can be so mobile is really quite exciting. Now, they're not going to do a ton of damage. Don't get your expectations too high, but the thing is, moving to objectives, pinning down the enemy, those are so important in this game that I think once you really get good at using these and like knowing where they need to be in the battlefield, I do believe they will serve you well. Now for our last unit here, they suggest Skywardens in the box, but we're also going to look at the Endrinriggers. This is a dual kit thing situation, and I'm going to explain the rules that are relevant in the Skywardens, and then we're going to skip over anything that's a copy paste for the Endrinriggers, stuff that's based upon having like the balloons and that kind of thing. So 12-inch move. They have 2 wounds each because they are an elite version. They have a 4-up save, which is great, and a bravery of 7. Now, a unit of Skywardens has any number of models, and each is armed with a Vulcanizer pistol and a Skypike. That's the coolest name for a gun. 1 in every 3 models can replace their Vulcanizer pistol and Skypike with an Ethermatic volley gun and a gun butt. 1 in every 3 models can replace their Vulcanizer pistol and Skypike with one of the following options: a drill launcher and gun butt, a grapnel launcher and gun butt, or a skyhook and gun butt. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I like to keep things simple. If I'm totally just blatantly honest with you, because every time you add a weapon profile, it's just more dice that have to be rolled, and it eats up the clock, if I'm honest with you. And I'm not even talking about like, you know, tournaments when you're timed. I just mean like literally if you want to meet your buddy and play a game, it takes time. So kind of keep that in mind as you go nuts with all these weapon options, but we'll continue. And one model can be the leader, the custodian they call it. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of that model's melee weapon. So whatever you choose, he's a little bit better at it. So let's talk about some of these weapon options here. We have the basic one, which is the Ethermatic... No. The Vulcanizer pistol and the Skypike are the basic ones. Pistol has a 9-inch range, 2 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend and 1 damage. That's a great pistol profile, I think. The Skypike is 2-inch range, 2 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, and D3 damage. Again, 2 attacks. When you have 3 of these guys, that's great. You can add 1 for the leader. If you want a melee unit, quite simply, their basic profile is really not that bad at all. You know, they have the speed, they can get up there. The Vulcanizer pistol, remember in Age of Sigmar versus 40k, you can shoot whatever you're engaged with. You know, you can shoot in the same turn, that kind of stuff. And so that's fantastic. Because when you combine the profiles of a pistol and a sky pike, because you'll be in range if you use one or the other, that's fantastic amount of damage. Very reliable. I like it. But let's say you wanted to spice it up. Let's go with the drill launcher here. Drill launcher is 24 inches range, 1 attack, 4 is to hit, 3 is to wound, -3 rend, and D3 damage. Again, the only thing that's not amazing is the 1 attack. We'll look down here. And the drill launcher, just like all the drill weapons here, if the unmodified hit roll made for an attack is a 6, it inflicts 3 mortal wounds. Again, all the drill weapons have some way of doing mortal wounds instead of a normal attack sequence. So that's cool. Then there is the grapnel launcher, or skyhook. 24-inch range, 1 attack, 4 is to hit, 3 is to wound, -2 rend, and 3 damage. Okay. So let's take a look here. Grapnel launcher, if you go with that option, is enemy units cannot retreat if they're within 3 inches of models armed with a grapnel launcher. Shutting down your enemy's ability to retreat is... I can't overstate how great that is, right? Because you're taking... Anytime you can take options away from your opponent, you're doing well, right? You can either give them hard choices or take away options, and that's just cool. They can't retreat onto an objective. If you were to do the thing I mentioned before with the Gunhauler and rush them forward and pin them down, if you got this unit next to them, and that enemy can't retreat, they're forced to stay there for the round. And that's, for some armies, that's devastating. For some, not so much, so your mileage will vary. But being able to have that on these guys, pretty cool. Now, the other option here is the Skyhook. They share the same attack profile, but their special abilities are different. And if you have the Skyhook, add 1 to charge rolls for this unit if any models are armed with a Skyhook. So that's a great way to add some teeth, I suppose, to this. Now, you can't take them both because only one model can be armed with a grapnel launcher or Skyhook. So that's what it is, but those are some great abilities based on that. And the last one, that's an option to you, and this one is just a straight profile. I don't think there is a specific special rule that goes along with it. And that is the volley gun, which is a 24-inch ranged gun, 6 attacks, 4 is to hit, 4 is to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. My personal thought on the Skywardens, and there's still more rules to cover, is I like them... Don't try to be a shooting with a unit with them. The Endrinriggers are probably better at that. These are a melee unit, and I think that they do best when they are doing melee, right? In my mind, the Skyhook, you take 1 Skyhook, okay, and you get this sweet profile, of course. And remember, if you give the Skyhook to the Custodian, your leader guy, 1 model's unit can be a Custodian. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of that model's melee weapons. You can give it to him. Obviously, it'll only work for the Sky Pike, but that's so cool. Like, you can, oh man, you can just go nuts with these things. So getting 1 to your charge rolls and getting a cool gun, that's rad. You know, he would have the Skyhook and the gun butt. Kind of a thing there, but I don't know. I think it's fantastic that you can dedicate them to having, +1 charge, or again, forcing your enemy not to retreat is great. Now, the Ethermatic Volley Gun up here at the 6 attacks, I know that looks super sweet, but 4 to hit takes away 3 of these. So that's on average. You have now 3 attacks, and then on a 4 up to wound, 1.5 on average. You're just not going to do a whole lot with a 4 to hit. So I just don't think that they're a great shooting unit. I would really, if you're going to go Skywardens, which I do like, I say melee, double down. Be the melee you want to see in the sky. Now, there are a few other things that I want to talk about here. There is, that's about all. I thought I went down further than that. They have this rule called hitchers, which is very important to them. If this unit is wholly within 6 inches of a friendly sky vessel, so any of your ships, immediately before the sky vessel uses its fly high ability, you can say that this unit will hitch a lift instead of making a normal move, as long as this unit has not already made a normal move in that same phase. If you do so, after that sky vessel has moved, remove this unit from the battlefield and set it up again wholly within 6 inches of the sky vessel, more than 1 inch from any terrain features or objectives, and more than 9 inches from any enemy models. And no more than 7 models can hitch a lift on the same sky vessel in the same turn. There's a lot of text there. Essentially, if you're going to do the cool teleport thing across the board, you can take infantry with you. So even though the Gunhauler doesn't have a capacity, like a carry capacity to bring troops and transport them, he has this cool way of teleporting along with him these hitchers, these flying units that I think the Endrinriggers have the exact same rule. And that's great. 7 models can hitch a lift on the same sky vessel. What that means is you could have 2 units of these guys and the Endrinmaster in his dirigible suit all move together. And that is a beautiful thing. You can use it offensively to get these guys into combat as fast as possible. Again, you'll still have to make that 9-inch charge, but you have a way of getting +1 charge here. That's great. Or you can use it defensively by basically just having this powerhouse unit that it kind of picks its targets very selectively and then teleports away, right? It'll smash whatever the most important unit to smash is and then pull themselves rapidly out of combat, because again, the ship can go wherever. It doesn't have to be, it can be in combat, it can be in melee, it can disengage by doing that. And so you can pull these guys out of combat anytime you want, and that's really nice. Now, the last things here are the sky mines. If an enemy unit that can fly ends a charge within 1 inch of any friendly model units with this ability, you can roll 1 dice for each model in that enemy unit. For each 6, it suffers a mortal wound. Not the greatest thing in the world, but it can do a thing here and there, right? I wouldn't bank on it, but it's a cool little thing to have in the back pocket. They also have tying charges. Roll 1 dice for each enemy unit that is within 3 inches of this unit immediately before this unit makes a retreat move. On a 4-up, the unit being rolled for suffers D3 mortal wounds. Again, incentivizing you for these hit and run tactics, which they exactly what they should be doing in melee in a shooting army, right? Just run in there, smash what needs to be smashed, and then get out. I like them. They're the melee variant. I think if you're going to go Skywardens, building around them is probably a great idea. But let's talk about the alternate option. Again, we're going to skip the things we've already covered. But I do see these guys as being, a real contender for some of the best models in this faction. Again, 12-inch move, 2 wounds, 4-up save, that's all the same. For missile weapons, they actually basically gave them both a lot of the same profile. So the Ethermatic volley gun, the grapnel launcher or skyhook, and the drill launcher, those are all exactly the same. We're not going to cover their special rules or anything like that. But their base weapon, instead of being the pistol, is the rapid fire rivet gun. 12-inch range, 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 4s to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. That's a great pistol. Okay, it's like a little Uzi that fires nails. Their basic melee weapon is the Ethermatic saw. 1-inch range, 1 attack each, 3s to hit, 2s to wound, -2 rend, and D3 damage. Now, the reason that the Skywardens are typically thought of as the melee unit, even though, their weapons are can seem a little weaker up front, the range is really important. The 2-inch range on them is important, whereas the 1-inch range here on these guys is kind of a detriment. But I dig it. Now, as far as the gun butts are the same, the loadouts are pretty much the same. Their base stuff, they get rapid fire rivet gun and the Ethermatic saw. And, 1 in every 3 models can do all the things like they said before. Their special leader guy is the same. Endrinmaster, add 1 to his attacks characteristic. We'll scroll down here. And we've already covered the engine craft. They have a chance to heal a nearby sky vessel. That's pretty great. The grapnel launcher is the same. The hitchers is the same. And so is the skyhook. So that is all super interesting. Now, the one thing that they do not get that I am not seeing here is they don't get the skyhook, right? I'm not seeing it, grapnel launcher. So they can't get the... Oh no, skyhook right at the bottom. Add 1 to charge rolls. I'm sorry, I don't know why that just totally was invisible to me. And so with these guys, what you're looking at is just really the different profiles. They can both take whatever weapon options are available to this kit. The physical dual kit has all the same weapon options. They can do whatever, but you're really looking at the rapid fire rivet gun versus the Vulcan pistol, and the Ethermatic saw versus the sky pike. In my opinion, I like the consistencies of these guys. I like the rivet gun. I just think it looks rad. As far as like synergies and stuff, you know, this doesn't really matter when it comes to your full army, but I like that the general that comes in this box has some form of synergy with them, just for teaching new players. I'm not going to say there's a right or a wrong answer here. The new Kharadon Overlords battletome, I think, did a great job of giving them both some play, but I lean towards Endrinriggers because they can latch onto a ship. Again, in combat, that Ethermatic saw is nasty. It is just nasty. And the fact that your sergeant of the unit gets +1 to his attack on that is just gross. I love them. I love them so much. You know, -2 rend where you can get it is important. These guys have the possibility of doing more damage. However, man, rend 2 cracks open a lot of things. That'll crack a lot of eggs for you. So in my opinion, I like the Endrinriggers more. Again, build what you like. I would just say, you know, really focus on their strengths. Like these guys, I feel like they can be a better shooting unit because, you know, again, I don't know. I feel like they're just kind of better at most things, if I'm honest with you. But certainly being able to latch onto a ship like both of these means both of these units have quite a bit of play because they can be delivered to the enemy, which is fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is head back to the other camera, and we're going to talk about this box in terms of its value. So rounding out the discussion, as I always do, kind of like stepping back with a better view. Talking about the value of this stuff, again, your mileage will vary depending on the kind of Kharadon Overlord army you want to build. Again, you know, all the battle line if options. What I will say is, even if you don't like any of those options and nothing here for you is battle line, this is still a great box to get in the long run because you will use the Gunhauler, you will use the Arkanaut Thunderers, and you will use either variation of the Skywardens or the Endrinriggers. The only model that doesn't really have a whole lot of, I guess, play in the longer game of things is the Endrinmaster itself. It tends to be that the version of him with the dirigible suit, which is a separate model, tends to be the better option just because he has more versatility and more movement, so he can kind of move around and do things a bit more, and he unlocks the flying guys, the blimpy boys as they call them, as battle line. So that's an interesting thought there. Kind of put that in your mind when you're thinking about how you want to build this out. But really, when I talk about the value of these boxes, I ask 2 basic questions. 1, does this Star Collecting box resemble or reflect the faction as a whole? And 2, are you actually going to use these models once you get playing? Like, once you have a full established army, are you actually going to use these things? So to answer the first question, does this reflect the faction well? It's perfect. Like, honestly, there's some boxes, what I really mean by that is you're not going to buy this box and then be totally blown away by what the rest of the faction looks like. You have dwarfs in armor with guns and flying things, right? You have the Gunhauler is its own ship, and ships are a huge part of the Kharadon Overlords. And then you have the personal, you know, the ether packs, the jetpack blimpy boys, in the form of the Skywardens and the Endrinriggers. Those are fantastic representations of this faction. In fact, all the coolest heroes have their own personal like blimp packs. And I don't know, I think it's a perfect representation. So if you buy this box because you're excited for the aesthetics, you're going to love everything else in the army, just straight up. As far as will you use these models when you have a full collection and you're playing full 2,000 point games and doing different kinds of lists and things, Yeah, I do think so. Again, it really depends on if you want to go more ship heavy versus infantry heavy. The truth is, there's a little bit of everything here because the Gunhauler is fantastic if you want to go ship heavy. I like that model a lot. Again, as I said before, I love high wound models that are no degrading profile. The Thunderers are a fantastic infantry unit, and no matter what you build with the Skywardens or the Endrinriggers, you're going to use them. Because quite frankly, there's like 16 different models or units in this army, and you get 1, 2, 3, and 4 of them in here, right? You know, depending on how you build things out. So it's just like, yeah, you're going to use them. It's a small faction. They're basically, with the exception of Arkanaut Company, all of your infantry options are here. So buying, 2, maybe 3, and then using the Endrinmasters for conversions and things like that, really not a bad idea. So I think the value is fantastic in terms of, you can be excited for this because it leads to better things in the army aesthetically, but then also you're going to use them, right? The weakest link in this entire box is the hero, but there's very few heroes in this game that you could buy multiples of and have it make perfectly reasonable financial sense, right? All of these things tend to fall apart depending on how many leaders that you have. So having 2 or 3 engine masters is not the worst place to be in. So I think it's awesome. I hope that you like it. If you are a Kharadon Overlords player, and I end all of my Star Collecting boxes like this, let me ask you this. What would you expand with, right? If somebody bought this because they liked it, let's say they bought 2 of them, right? What would you suggest for their next step? Part of me thinks that some larger ship like the frigate to be able to transport your hero and the units would probably be the best thing. But there's no replacement for people who actually, have tangible hands-on experience with these things. So if you are a KO player, let me know in the comments down below and I'll pin the most helpful comment about, just kind of putting people on the right path to success with this faction. So anyway, friends, thank you so much for joining me for this review, and I will catch you next time. Happy wargaming.